Well, good morning, guys. Look, I'm not in my bedroom.
Woohoo!
I didn't actually have an opening line until Ron gave me one, and I'm not in my bedroom, guys. We're actually in a space. There's actually another human in the square with me.
What up?
It is amazing. We're at Soul City Church. Today, I'm here with Maddie. I'm here, Madeline Holler. Sorry, Maddie.
Oh, you're great, Joel.
We're really good friends, but to you guys, Madeline Holler. And then we have Ron, and to you guys, Dr. Ron Bueno.
Yes, Dr. Ron.
That's right. You earned it, and we're going to call you that. And I'm going to introduce you guys and introduce you to one of my favorite people in the world right now. Ron, I'm going to give you a second to do all the nerd things, I promise. But we're going to introduce one of my favorite people in the entire world, Madeline Holler. Ladies and gentlemen.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the show. Welcome
This is my
to
first
Coffee
time
With
doing
Enlace.
something like this.
Yeah, and you know what, guys?
I'm a little nervous.
Don't be nervous. You're here with friends. We're pretty much this close 24 hours a day,
Yes,
just so you know. We're neighbors.
True. We do live across the hall from each other.
Maddie is drinking water on Coffee With Enlace today because we're having a baby.
Yes, I am having a baby. I don't know about we, but.
By we, I mean her and her husband.
Yes.
But I'm the closest next person to you guys.
You are our closest neighbor.
Literally across the hall from them. So by we, I mean
all of us are having a collective baby. No.
We're having a baby, guys. And I'm so excited about it.
Any day now.
All right, guys. So welcome to Coffee With Enlace. If this is your first time joining us, thank you so much. You picked a great day to tune in because we are at Soul City Church today.
Yes.
You've heard about it. I told you guys I'm a volunteer for Enlace that works at Soul City Church. I'm hospitality manager here, and Maddie does Love Works directing.
Yes, yeah. So I'm the Love Works director here at Soul City. So I've been a part of this church for about 6 years, actually, this month, but have been on staff for about a year and a half. And all of what I get to do is work with incredible organizations and partners like Enlace, both locally and globally. Yeah. And I can't believe I get to wake up every day, and that's my job. So
and do it. Yes.
It's amazing.
And you're so good at it. One of the first times I met Maddie, for real. We had met each other kind of in passing, but the first time we met was on a trip in El Salvador through Enlace.
Yep.
And it was, one of the coolest stories that I have about you is we were building Israel's house. It was a 5-story hike up the side of a mountain to carry materials.
I think it was a hill, but it definitely felt like a mountain.
Hey, look, it didn't have steps. We had to cut steps into the mountain. We did cut
steps into the mountain.
We go out in the morning with one team. Half that team was like, yo, I can't. Take me out, coach.
Too tired.
And she was like, I'll go. And I was like, okay. And so she jumps on there. And one of my most vivid memories of you is you like kind of shimmying and dancing down the side of the mountain with all the kids. I have a video. I should have brought it to cue it up, but I was trying to set up a studio. But just shimmying down the mountain full of joy, dancing with the kids, loving the kids, all the kids around. And that's who you are. And that's how I got a chance to meet you for the first time. And that was 3 years ago. And what has God done since then?
So much.
You weren't even on staff then.
No.
So tell me about that a little bit, Ron. I promise we're going to get you in just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Bueno, the executive director of Enlace. He's going to talk about some very important things today. But I want to tell me a little bit about your experience with Enlace. What has it meant to you personally?
Yeah, so that memory that you shared is actually one of my favorite memories from the multiple trips that I've been on with Enlace to El Salvador, mainly because it was the hardest work, I think, physically that I've ever done in my entire life. And the only way that I could get through it was to dance and play music with the kids. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to carry another cement block up this hill. Yeah. And the only way I can get through it is to shimmy up and down because I don't know how else to. Yeah. But oh my goodness, I feel we moved, I don't know,
10,000 pounds.
Sure.
No, I'm serious.
It was a lot. It was a lot of cement blocks to build the foundation of this home, or help the community kind of build the foundation of this home. And I remember looking down the hill and being like, have we even made a dent 6 hours later?
The answer was no.
The answer was no, because another group brought another pile of the cement blocks for us for the next day. But
That's right.
I think I lost like 15 pounds that week because of the amount of lifting up that hill. But honestly, every other trip with Enlace I've been on, I'm like, oh, we have to move boulders? Easy. Like, we got this. We got this. So yeah, that's one of my favorite memories of Enlace. But I heard about Enlace for the first time through Soul City when they were taking a trip, the trip that Joel and I were on together, and was just so encouraged, first of all, by the ways that Soul City declared a partnership so early on with Enlace, and making sure that any person who was going to go on one of these trips was fully trained in understanding that we were not going to El Salvador to solve all the problems or to fix all the broken things. And for me, I grew up in somewhat of the like traditional, we go on mission trips and interact with people and share the gospel or whatever it might be. But Enlace and Soul City and that partnership looked so different, because we were able to realize that we're actually just going to a lot of times learn from the community and just come alongside what seems like a simple project, but could actually be very life-changing for a family and for a community. And so a lot of it was that physical labor and kind of getting through all of that, but spending the time processing and realizing that these 5-year-old kids are right next to me lifting these cement blocks up the hill, and I'm exhausted, but they might be exhausted and they aren't wearing shoes. And I mean, I was just like going through my head of how cool is it that Enlace has supported the community so well to come alongside Israel and his family to say, this isn't just the Western world or the United States coming to build this home. In fact, we're coming alongside your community to encourage you. And so that is what first drew me to a connection and partnership with Enlace.
Yeah, it was life-changing. And you know what, Ron, I want to make sure that you have a chance to introduce yourself, but then also kind of give us the general framework of what Enlace does. If this is someone's first time, you know, watching the show, what is it about? How did that story come to fruition through Enlace?
Well, thanks, Joel, Madeline. It's awesome to be on the show with you guys. And it is amazing not to see you stuck in your room. This is fantastic.
I didn't wear it, but
with that little workout thing that you have in the back door or whatever it is hanging from your closet.
Yeah.
So it's a whole new vision. I love this. This is great.
I'm going to take that down tonight. Anyways, I totally forgot that I was there. But yes, you saw it every time.
That's awesome.
All right.
Yeah, my eyes always went right to it. So, you know, you got to really stay focused.
Kind of looks like a gun holster, but it's not. Anyways.
Hey, yeah, it's a whole different deal. All right, so I was born and raised in El Salvador. My parents were missionaries there for 30 years. So I've actually spent most of my life in El Salvador at different times. Went back in 93 to start what is now called Enlace. And Enlace basically walks along, resources church and community leaders to work together to identify the needs in their community, and then to really understand what resources they have so they can begin to work on solutions together that will ultimately lead to long-term change.
Yeah.
So Enlace means to link or form a relationship. So what we do is we really encourage creating a strong relationship between church and community leaders first, and then Enlace team and church and community leaders second, and then U.S. church teams, Enlace community third. And that's the kind of the interlocking hands. If you look at the Enlaces, like a little two hands come together. That's where those relationships kind of come together to have an impact on low-income and under-resourced communities.
Yeah, we are fans, to say the least.
Yes.
To say the least.
Yeah.
You guys are some of our favorite people in the world. It's one of the reasons why I've been volunteering with you guys for 17 years now. Is that what it is?
Something like that.
It feels
something
like.
I
mean,
and you're only 19
5 months,
so
or 4 months, but 17 years feels like 17 years. And one of the first people I talked to about it was Maddie. Actually, I was like, I think God's telling me to do it as a volunteer, and she was like, her first response was, "Wow." Because she as my friend kind of knows the situation I'm in. She's like, okay, you're gonna sure, all right, that's what you're gonna do. And she was the first supporter of this show, actually, before we even knew we were gonna do it. So I just want to say that.
Awesome.
Shout out to you.
I love it.
Shout out to Madeline Holler. But Ron, give us an update. How are we doing down there? I know you guys have had to shift everything, right? So the original model or mainstay of the model is for you to bring down, North American church communities down to El Salvador. And we helped fund projects. We helped like with some of the administrative funding of Enlace in our donorship kind of structure, but that's changed obviously because COVID. So how you guys have shifted to a relief and recovery, model for the last few weeks or a few months, and tell me about that and give us an update on that. I think you have some numbers for us.
Sure. Yeah, it's, as of March 12th, as we've talked about in previous shows, we kind of discarded our whole plan. Our strategy is long-term community development or community transformation. So the relief part and the recovery part, which are normal parts of any natural disaster. We have disasters, throughout Central America all the time. We kind of have those plans in place always for, hurricane or landslides or, earthquakes. But those are very different normally. It affects usually one region or one community. It's 4 or 5 months. You kind of, jump in there. You kind of see how you can resolve it. The other churches help resource it because they're not all affected. Right. And then you kind of walk your way, back to some sort of recovery and then development model again. Obviously, in this situation, entirely different. It's affecting the whole country of not only El Salvador, but Guatemala and Nepal and the world. And it's long. So we kind of at the very beginning knew this was an 18 to 24 month deal for us. And what would that look like? We were listening to pastors, trying to figure out how they're planning on responding, what they were actually doing. Really measuring the level of relationship between church and community leaders. Did they feel safe? Were they wanting to reach out? Were they still engaged? And to our amazing surprise, and I say this not in hyperbole or for dramatic purposes, in our amazing surprise, the church and communities have stepped up and owned their relief. It's incredible. To date, 2.7 million meals have been provided to families. And here's the most incredible thing. 2 million of them, which is 75%, have all been provided by church and community mobilizing their own resources or working with other nonprofits outside of Enlace's resources.
Wow.
So at first we thought, okay, what can Enlace do? We start mobilizing, we start providing them kind of the resources to do it, but never in our wildest imagination did we think that, churches, literally it's the coolest stories. Fishing, going down to the lake to fish, to provide fish for older people that can't get out. People, neighbors that lived next to them that are now living abroad, sending them emails, posting on Facebook saying, hey, we need help, and them sitting down wires. And you see pastors so I asked the pastor that, I said, so how are you doing this? He says, well, we sent them a 2-page proposal like you guys taught us to do. We sent it up there. They wired the transfer. We took copies of everything. We sent them a full report of all the expenses like we always do with you guys. And they've been mobilizing, like I said, over 2 million meals on their own. This is not community. This is not government resources. This is resources mobilizing from other NGOs, from neighbors. It's incredible to see what's happened there. So they're owning it. It's strengthened those relationships. Those networks that already existed between church and community have just been mobilized and catalyzed to really see this impact as of right now. We're hoping to feed through August, September at this point. So that's kind of where we're at. We're also kind of starting to look ahead in what do the next steps look like. About 55-60% of the communities we work with in El Salvador, Guatemala, and in Nepal are rural communities, which means they rely on agricultural production for their livelihoods. In El Salvador, as well as in Guatemala, their rainy season is from May to October, November. So farmers normally will get 2 seasons. They'll get a May cultivation and a August cultivation. If they don't cultivate in either of those 2 months, then they don't have food for the rest of the year. So we're right now helping church communities identify who harvested in the first shot, who was not able to harvest in the first opportunity, who can do the second one, what do they need to get going so that they can at least provide food for themselves for the next year. And then we're also working with micro-enterprise recovery loans, and we'll talk more about that now, but helping micro entrepreneurs get on their feet and figure out what the next steps are. So we're transitioning from relief that will kind of fade out into what we call now the recovery stages.
I think that's incredible. And I got chills when you were talking about that, because like, this is what we heard about you. This is what we've loved about you. Like, this is what you, meaning Enlace, and you meaning you, God, because you're the one that did it all, like, period. But you've used Enlace, and you guys have taught them these skill sets, and we have kind of fallen in love with those parts, those sustainability parts. And it really has helped to shift our perspective. Our perspective. I mean, the first time I ever read When Helping Hurts is when you led the first mission trip that I was on. And so I want to kind of shift it to you and say, inside of that perspective shift, inside of that, it may not have been a new way to you, but it was a new way to me. And inside of that, like, how has Enlace helped to shift that perspective to be a better neighbor here in Chicago, right? Because that's where we are here, and, kind of moving from our personal self out into the world, right? Probably the way that Jesus would have done it. And you've done it so well. And so how has that perspective shift affected Chicago as you as a neighbor, and then looking out into the world and into organizations like Enlace?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ron, thanks for that update. It's incredible. I mean, that blows my mind. Crazy. That the majority of the meals and the resources have been from the churches and from the communities. And I have chills, but I'm also not surprised, because you speak that. And I would say, when I first heard about Enlace and the ways that Enlace talked so much about community development, empowering churches and empowering communities to take the lead, and removing even the Enlace name from things, and developing leader churches, all of that was so fascinating to me. And I have to say, at first I was skeptical, because so many organizations say that that's what they're going to do, and that they're going to empower the churches and the church leaders and the community leaders to come alongside each other, and then Enlace would be a part of that. But the first time that I was there, and we spent half a day learning from the community leaders, that what first blew my mind was that it wasn't just the church leaders either, that it actually included a principal from the school, and an engineer, a local engineer that actually didn't go to the church, and all these other people. That, to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a different model that I've not seen. Or even back in Chicago, we're just working with churches. How are we starting to include community members in what we're doing and how we're doing it? And so even though it is something that I've thought about for a long time, until I saw it in El Salvador done so well, and even on our project, I didn't hear the word Enlace spoken one time when we were in the community. I mean, truly, it was the church, the pastor, this engineer. And so they were the ones taking the lead. And I have to say, when I took that back then, and then when I came on staff at Soul City, the first thing I wanted to do was to get community members together. And so instead of going to our local partners and saying, here's what we can do from Soul City for you, we went and spent time listening to all of them and saying, what is it that you could use? Or what ideas do you have? Or what do you envision for a future of your school or your organization that we can become a part of? That's and what can we fit into? And so I would say our model of partnership has shifted because of Enlace and because of the ways that you all do things. And so we created partnership plans that were brand new, but are things that Enlace I know does with communities, that establishes what are the next year, 3 years, 6 years, 9 years look like for us. And also understanding that development actually takes that long. So that one-off projects are important to draw people in, and even one-off trips like this are important to get people out of comfort zones and experiencing something new. But what else? What is beyond that? And how are we engaging a bit deeper? So that's how I've been changed. I don't know if that answered your question.
Amen. Great answer. Awesome. This means I agree without me interrupting her too much. So I'm just like,
snaps.
Whenever I'm
all snapping. The snaps everywhere.
All the snaps. So just so you know.
And that you have you have a Mediterranean background. So you're doing the castanets.
Oh, I like that. I like
that. Man, I love this studio, by the way. I don't think I'll ever record in my bedroom again. Anyways, but so you actually gave us a perfect segue and it might kind of look like a handoff, but I want you to talk about what are we doing now? So you set it up for like, okay, what's next? We can't go down there. Well, what's next? We're still called to be partners with Enlace. So what's next? And then Ron, you can fill us in on some of the nerd details because you're so good at it.
Yeah. So, I mean, early on in this, we realized, or in this being COVID, we realized, okay, the traditional way that we have partnered with Enlace, which has included other things as well, but most of our partnership has been sending teams or bringing teams to El Salvador to both learn and engage with the community there. And early on, we realized, oh, it's going to be a little while until that happens again. A little while before airports open, but also we care deeply about training our teams that go. And so we recognize that even though it might flights or airports might open sooner than later, we're still going to wait because we care deeply about making sure people feel equipped and what that process looks like too. So we went to Enlace and a few contacts at Enlace that we work closely with and said, what is it that we can continue to grow in this partnership, and how can we continue to be a church partner and learn from you in this season? But a partnership is two ways. And so what are ways that we can also start to educate our community more and mobilize our community, even if we're not leaving our homes or our spaces as much as we might have before. And so we chatted with Enlace, and there's a few things that have come up. And one of those is really this microfinance program that is really energizing to me personally. So I came from kind of corporate world at a marketing agency and care deeply about enterprise and what that means, and understand that money makes the world go round, and nonprofits are important, but also we know that the world will not function without businesses. And so how can we kind of sustainably support this initiative that Enlace started? And I know Ron knows way more details than I do, but through COVID, so many microfinances or the loans that have been provided to individuals and communities have fallen short because of lockdown and because people can't leave their homes and go and run their business or start their business or continue their business. And so one of the things that we long to be more engaged with is telling this to our community here and sharing the story of what's happening in El Salvador and with Enlace, but then also kind of backfill a lot of those loans that then have fallen due to COVID, which makes so much sense. And that's actually something that we're talking about here in Chicago as well. So we've been working with some local organizations to figure out what does that look like in the city too, for a lot of businesses that we're about to be starting or just started and can't continue because they have fallen on a loan. We would love for that to not be the case moving forward. So that's a passion of mine and something that we long to just educate our community more on, and is a way that we feel like we could partner with Enlace and El Salvador, especially in this moment.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this. I don't know why, but I was on the bus, one of the van that you guys pick us up and drive us around while we're in country. And I remember
Happy Bus?
Was it?
The Happy Bus.
The Happy Bus.
Oh, I like that.
I didn't know it was called that, but I love that name. So I was on the Happy Bus, and that kind of sounds like a 60s term, but whatever. So I was
we can change it.
Hey man, we're on the Happy Bus. But anyways, so we're on the Happy Bus, and we were talking about that, and Franco actually was telling me, he was pointing at some of the vendors on the side of the road, and they had fruit stands, and then I saw, halfway down the road, another half mile, another fruit stand, and another one, and I would see people, and this is like a legit way that people are picking up fruit for the day or go back into their neighborhoods. And in rural El Salvador, there's like the main veins, the main roads, right? And then they branch off into the side roads and down hills and mountains and, not paved and very hard on truck axles. But, but we kept seeing those. And he's like, well, these vendors take out a microloan, which, could be a couple $100s or whatever it is. And then they set up their stands, and then they do their business that way. So they get a loan up front to purchase everything, and then they have terms of the loan, just very similar to we understand it here in the States. And I remember this just now when you were talking. I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier, but he was saying that because it's a community that borrows the money, they all keep each other accountable.
Hmm.
So so they have a very low rate of defaulting. I want to point that out because prior to COVID, defaulting on these loans was unheard of because it was a community. Like, hey, if you didn't pay your loan back or you didn't make your payment for the month or whatever it is, the other people in your kind of loan pod would keep you accountable and keep you, like stay on you for it. So that's kind of what we were observing before COVID. And then obviously COVID goes sends the world sideways. And, one of the greatest hunger crises of our time hits. And so that becomes, I want to make that clear because sometimes when you hear like default on a loan, you think, oh, irresponsibility. No, this is a very responsible community, very responsible, very accountable to each other. And they have been running this system, and you guys have been part of this system because you'll tell us about that, but you guys have kind of a sister company or partnership that helps with this. So if you want to tell us about that, Ron, I would love for you to give us some of the details.
Well, you're both exactly right. You can't have long-term development without economic development. In other words, you can't provide someone a house, and then if they don't have any income coming in, that house will not be able to be maintained. In 10 years, the house is gone.
Yep.
Right.
But at the same time, if they don't have a house, then they have no place to put their equipment, and therefore they can't have a job. So they're both interrelated. You've got to be working on economic development issues at the same time as you're working in water, housing, all the other components, education, so that really they all add value to each other and allow a community to be changed.
Right.
And so recognizing that, in 1998, we started talking with different producers in 2 or 3 of the communities we were working with initially. All of them, in this particular case, were in the rural area. They did not have access to loans. So we, at that point, decided to create a credit union. But right from the beginning, we realized, you know what, if Enlace does it, or if the church does it, we can create some problems. Because you can have a really strong church member that's working with their community, that's actively engaged. But if their business goes south for whatever reason, they lose their providers, they lose their suppliers, or they lose their market, or whatever happens, then they'll step back from the church and they step back from community development initiatives.
Wow.
So we didn't want, because out of losing face or shame or whatever.
Sure.
So we didn't want anything that we were doing with the credit component to affect the church or what was happening in the community or Enlace. So we created a separate credit union in 1998 called Creditec. I know that sounds like a weird name, but it's credit and technical assistance. So business development pushed together, Creditec, which does all of our on lending. So what that means is as the church begins to work with their community, if they identify people that either have an existing business that needs some capital to grow, or an existing farm that needs capital to grow, then we connect them to our sister organization, Creditec, and then Creditec has a one-on-one conversation with them saying, this is a loan, this is not anything to do with what's happening in the community, this is a loan, do we understand each other? And that's been a great reason why we do, up to now, we've had between 97 and 98% repayment on a yearly basis on our loans.
I knew I heard it right. Wow.
That's incredible.
That's way better than I even thought.
So and obviously that's a little bit different right now, and we can talk about that in a second.
Absolutely.
But what's neat about just to add maybe a little bit of wrinkle onto this, because I think many people have heard of microfinance institutions. It's obviously all around the world. It became kind of a big issue and a big strategy for many organizations to fix or to do community development. In our case, what we've really focused on having impact as opposed to just large amounts of loans and recoveries. There's many organizations that just place to recover. In our case, because our whole model is built off of building deep relationships and growing in understanding with each other and growing kind of with the business, the credit union has a focus really on building deep relationships with their clients over many years and really walking through a process of growing. And then our loan product grows with them as they kind of grow their company. So in the case of Creditec, we've got clients that have been with us for 16, 18, 19 years that are just doing incredible stuff that, grew from one little stand, working with a loan shark, basically making whatever they were making that day, they're basically consuming, to having 6, 7 employees, their own stand, their own locations. And it's really cool to watch that, development of that company. over a period of time. So it's with those clients that we've really been focused on since March.
Mm-hmm.
In March, the government allowed, or I shouldn't say allowed, they put out a national decree saying that no one had to pay back any loan for 3 months. So it was a forced holiday for all microfinance organizations. No one had to pay it back,
Wow.
to provide that space, which I think was probably an okay move from the government to do, simply because these micro entrepreneurs were struggling to pay back their loans in the first place. What we did at that point was really sit with each one of our clients, because we have kind of deep relationships with them, prayed with them, hung out with them, really tried to encourage them. Then in some cases, we provided food aid for them because they could not even feed their families.
Yeah.
In most cases, a micro entrepreneur literally has 3 to 7 days of inventory. So if they don't sell in a 3 to 7 day period, they've got no income.
Yeah.
The majority of these micro entrepreneurs live entirely from their business, their small business. So that meant that in 7, 8, 10 days, they did not have food for their families, and they were starting to consume what little money they had for inventory on food.
Yeah.
So we provided them food aid. We tried to walk it out with them. We thought through their businesses. Some businesses could come back right away. So they're selling food. They're selling other stuff that people can buy that need to buy. Other companies are like clothing or shoes. No one has any money to buy. So we kind of try to think through, how can you sell something else? How are you going to make it through this process? So then what we try to do is we looked at each business and have begun now personalizing and refinancing or restructuring their loans, getting them new capital in to their businesses so they can get up going. We identified 68 clients that we needed to start with immediately. And so it was about $130,000 that we needed to refinance their loans. We've got about 50 of that raised. We're looking for 75 more to keep going. So we've been able to kind of get the first batch of loanees out in July. We already gave the first $27,000 out. Wow. In August, we want to do another 25, 30. We've got to get them back going now. And so there's kind of a sense of urgency before they lose their businesses and obviously then go back to being hungry and not being able to sustain their families. So that's what we're trying to work on right now with what we call the micro finance recovery loans.
That's awesome. That's incredible. The work that you guys do and the thought and the intentionality behind it it always blows me away, because you always know the stories. You're always spending time, in that time you could have focused on everything else you guys got to do, but you guys decided to go spend time with them, pray with them. And I think that's incredible. So Maddie, what are we going to do? What are some things that we're going to be doing with Soul City into this next season? I mean, you're going to be off doing baby things, and we bless that, and we're going to pray for you about that in a minute. But how are we moving our relationship forward, and how could other churches move their relationship forward with Enlace during this time?
Yeah, I think giving towards this program would be the first ask for sure. I'm so energized by the fact, there are some things that Ron, you just shared that I didn't even know, and I love, and it reiterates the reason we love partnering with you all and how we have so much to learn from you in this season. And even just the ways that you've been thoughtful and understanding that this isn't just a 1 month thing, that this is going to be long term, and in the fact that getting these businesses back off the ground is key in supporting individuals and families and communities and employees. I think of the trickle that it hits. And so, living in Chicago, we have a lot of working people, and we have had a lot of people lose their jobs here as well. And so what we would just want to continue to tell the story of the ways that microloans can really alter somebody's life, especially now. And so we want to make sure that from Soul City, we're giving towards this program, but then also that we're asking that you give towards this program as well, so that we can start supporting these people and praying for them by name as well from here. I think that's such a key thing as well, that it's not just a lump sum of money going out to people that you all don't know or that we don't know, but these are individuals that you've been in partnership and connection with for so long. So that's what we'll be doing moving forward. And I would say for churches, this feels like a no-brainer to get involved.
I mean, it's 130 grand, guys, and it can really, what was it, 485 different businesses? Is that what it was?
No, it was 80. It was this particular thing is 65 companies,
again.
but it's going to benefit about 500 people.
Yeah, with
families. Yes,
and
that's what it
communities, which is huge. I mean, and the trickle even beyond that as well, I think is absolutely huge. So
and so one way you guys can do that is go to enlace.link/donate. And then they're searching for
economic development, I believe, is the drop down that goes directly towards this. So
yeah, if you want to do that, if that you're moved to do that, and then churches. I mean, we're encouraging you guys. This is, if you haven't heard the theme, there's kingdom work being done in and through Enlace. There are things that we have learned. There are ways that the kingdom has been blessed all over, and to hear that people are able to mobilize themselves. It's the lead of fish, teach a man to fish, you know what I'm saying? Or feed him for a day, feed him, give him a fish.
Come on, Joel, you can do it.
Give him a fish, you can feed him for a day. Teach him to fish, you can feed his family for life. But that is walked out in the model of Enlace, and so much work has been done in that space to bless the kingdom. And so as members of this kingdom, churches out there, we'd encourage you guys to kind of look at what you guys are doing outside of the walls of your church. Love works. That's your job, and I love it. And you do it so well. That's our mission.
Well, and I would say too, sorry to cut in, but I mean, something that I've noticed is that over the past 4 or 5 months, we've been really focused on ourselves and our small circles and our communities, which is so important. We need to start there. We need to start in our homes and our families. However, there is also like these connections globally. This global hunger crisis is not something that we want to miss either. And I also need to remind myself that God is not surprised by this moment. Like we are here for just a time as this. And it does not mean we need to pause and wait for things to happen and wait for things to open, but that he has envisioned the ways that we could partner and like never before, and the ways that we can be the church like never before, even if it looks like something we had no idea was coming. But he is not surprised, and he's with us and with in that partnership through and through. So
amen. All the snaps to that. So if you're watching this and you're watching this for the first time, and you are a church partner, current church partner of Enlace or not, you can evaluate what that looks like. I don't know why I felt the $130,000 to make this sort of an impact seems like a very manageable thing, and a very many hands make light work type thing. So the more people we can get involved in it, the easier and faster we can get to that and get people back to this isn't relief. There's value and benefit to relief and recovery, and Enlace has stepped in that gap. I think Soul City has stepped in that gap here in Chicago, and so many churches have stepped in that gap. But there's just a different sort of value to giving people the resources and the dignity to fund it and to work for it and to supply it for their families and multiple families in their network and in their community from there. So enlace.link/donate. Economic recovery is the drop down. The link is in the comments because we got the best comment section on the planet right now. Hey, hi Mark, hi Dave, hi Michelle. We miss you guys. But now we move into closing the show and prayer time. So I'm going to do this. I try to do it on the spot always, and I want you to pray for Enlace, and for the city of Chicago, the United States of America, Central America, the world, and then I want to pray for you. Okay. All right.
Oh, Lord, thank you for technology. It feels like such a weird prayer, but I'm so grateful that we can still connect and learn from such incredible leaders like Ron and all that he's built, and the deep passion and love that he has for El Salvador, for Guatemala, for Nepal, for the world. It is so evident and so clear. Lord, I thank you for paving the way for this partnership many years ago, and for the ways that you are continuing to develop a partnership that looks like not something that we expected, but God, that you envisioned before any of us were even born. Lord, I just pray a radical covering over the communities that we've engaged with, the communities that Enlace engages with in El Salvador and Guatemala and Nepal right now. I pray that these loans lead to new businesses and new ideas, new joys, new comfort, in ways that we did not expect, new connections to other communities, new connections to other people. And Lord, I just thank you for the ways that Enlace so quickly shifted and met needs right where they were. Lord, your hand is over Enlace because they have been faithful to doing things the way that you would do them, to following in your path, to sitting with people, to praying with people, to meeting people where they're at, and not jumping to conclusions, but to listening and to being in the hard. And Lord, I just pray that we learn that from them now, that we as a church, as a global church, as individuals, that we take that back and shift our households, that we shift our families and our communities to sit with people and to listen and to engage and to move towards action. And God, I thank you for Ron and the ways that he has led his team so graciously, that he has called them up into new leadership and asked things that probably were hard to ask. But I thank you for giving him that new vision. And I pray that you sustain that in the coming months that might feel daunting and hard. But God, we know that you are with him and with his family. And with all of the staff of Enlace that's located all over the world. I pray that they feel more connected than ever. And Lord, we just pray for a radical connection of the church in this time, that churches rise up and support communities, and that they ask advice of community members, and that they just, that they are not closing their doors, but they are throwing them wide open. Maybe not physically, but in ways that we can't imagine and that you have had planned. Lord, I thank you for who you are and who you are in this conversation, who you are in these countries, who you are in this world. And we just pray a prayer of gratitude for this next season.
And Lord, I just kept hearing you whisper, "Woman of God," in my ears. And I am just in awe of the woman of God that you've created that's sitting next to me. That's my neighbor. That's my friend. That's my leader. That's my pastor. That's the logistics wizard here at Soul City Church. And just everything you've put into this woman, Lord, to be a blessing to your kingdom. And we thank you for that, Lord. We thank you for the way that she has led this partnership with Enlace and all of our partners so well, so intentional, so systematically, and bringing all of herself and her everything that she's learned in the world and in business to this, and filled it with heart, and filled it with your way, and made a plan and opened her hands and said, if that's the plan you want to be, God, let it be. And if it's not, we're going to shift to something different. That's a special thing, Lord. And that is this woman, Madeline Holler. And Lord, we pray that you bless her as her and CJ become parents in the next month, in 3 weeks today. In 3 weeks, Lord, she gets to experience you in your most pure form. And for that, Lord, we thank you. And I pray you blessings over them and over their family, over their house, and protection in all the things, Lord, but allow her to walk away from the things that she knows that you're going to take care of, and be free to be the mom that she's about to be. And we bless that, Lord, and we would be remiss not to celebrate that miracle today. And so we thank you for that miracle. We thank you for the life that you're developing inside of her. And we bless you and bless your name and all the things that you're doing right now in and through the world. We are so thankful that you are at the helm, because we are weak and confused and we just need you, and you keep showing up. And we thank you for that so much. In Jesus' name, bless everyone on this call, anyone listening to this call. Let this be just something that they needed for today, Lord. We thank you for that in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys, this is the last time. There will never be another recording in my bedroom. Okay. seems like the theme, overarching theme, the underlying, because this is too good.
It is too good.
It's too good.
It is.
And so our next goal is to get some folks together and maybe get Coffee with Enlace with some folks that might be looking to think to organize some microfinance things. So stay tuned, guys. Tune into Enlace has a YouTube channel. And so if you like this conversation, if you like, you know, all the information that Ron had to bring to it and my silly banter, and then multiple hosts, multiple guests, there's a whole page. There's a Coffee with Enlace drop down on the Enlace YouTube page. So go back, check out some of those things. The good work is being done here. We thank you for tuning in, and God bless everyone.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Madeline. God bless you.
So good to see you.
Our pleasure.